Hello, and welcome to the Gale Blade News. 13 universities face a very real prospect of insolvency following the coronavirus crisis, unless they receive a government bailout, as study suggests. High-ranking universities with large numbers of international students face the largest immediate drop in income, says the Institute for Fiscal Studies, but the least prestigious universities are at the greatest risk, says the IFS. The IFS says a targeted government bailout of the universities most at risk is the most effective plan. The fallout from COVID-19 poses a significant financial threat across UK higher education, with most institutions left with reduced net assets, says the analysis. They say the total size of the sector's losses is highly uncertain, anywhere between 3 billion and 19 billion, or between 7.5% and almost half the sector's annual income. The researchers' central estimate is at £11 billion loss, amounting to a quarter of the sector's annual income. Lockdown-related losses include fewer international student enrolments, less income from student accommodation, conferences and catering, losses on long-term investments. In addition, universities which are running pension scheme deficits will see them widen during the pandemic as investments stagnate, but there are big variations between institutions, says the study. Universities with many international students, which also have substantial pension obligations, are often also higher-ranking institutions with large financial buffers and the option of alleviating losses by admitting more UK-based students. But this behaviour could harm less selective universities, which could see their potential students recruited by higher-ranking institutions. Without significant redundancies, which would impact on teaching quality, universities are unlikely to be able to claw back much of the losses through cost savings, the research warns. Some universities went into the crisis with far stronger finances than others, they add. Our analysis shows it is not the universities with the greatest losses, but the institutions in the weakest financial positions before the crisis that are at the greatest risk of insolvency, they conclude. The researchers do not name names, but under their central estimate, suggest 13 universities out of the UK's 165 higher education institutions would end up with negative reserves and thus may not be viable in the long run without a government bailout or debt restructuring. The analysis, which was funded by the Nuffield Foundation, suggests a targeted bailout aimed at keeping these institutions afloat could cost just £140 million. IFS research columnist Elaine Drayton said a targeted bailout would be by far the cheapest option. However, rescuing failing institutions may weaken incentives for others to manage their finances prudently in future, she warned. General increases in research funding avoid this problem, but are unlikely to help the institutions that are most at risk, as few of them are research active. The National Union of Students said the crisis had exposed many of the flaws inherent in running our education like a market. When funding is so unstable, it's no wonder that our universities and the jobs of thousands of academic and support staff are now at risk, said a spokesperson. We are, of course, especially concerned about the risk to students that this instability poses. The University and College Union's General Secretary, Joe Grady, called on the government to step in and guarantee lost funding for universities so they can weather this crisis and lead our recovery on the other side. We need a comprehensive supportive package that protects jobs, preserves our academic capacity, and guarantees all universities' survival, said Dr. Grady. In a statement, the Department for Education said a government package announced in May allows UK universities to access business support and job retention schemes, and while the sector will also benefit from the pulling forward of £2.6 billion in tuition fee payments to ease cash flow problems. Additionally, research-focused universities across the UK will see 80% of fees lost from international students covered by government, alongside £280 million in extra research funding. Alistair Jarvis, Chief Executive of Universities UK, said the body had been working closely with government on proposals to support universities. Nicola Dandridge, Chief Executive of the Universities Watchdog for England, urged all registered higher education providers to inform the Office for Students if they encountered financial difficulties. In these circumstances, we will be proactive in ensuring students' interests are protected, including helping make sure that students can find an appropriate course elsewhere should any provider close, she added. Is this something you've been quite concerned about? Obviously, with the universities having 165 of them, And that might be the reason that some of them need to close. That might be just too many for the market and just not be financially viable for a few of them. Not just the 13 that kind of highlighted in this article, but some of those that even do weather the coronavirus problem might only just be doing so and might go into debt at a later stage within that very same year, academic year. Are you someone who is actually going to university this year? And are you nervous about how you're actually interacting within the university and how the quality of your education is going to be? Or are you actually deferring this year because you think actually there's no point until I actually understand what's going on? Whatever you think, leave a comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.